Mahnoor Abid, the Global Communication Manager at BetterTech. Today, I welcome you to another episode of BetterTech Startup Series, where we usually host guests that are startup founders and hear about their struggles and achievements, and we discuss all their pain points. So without further ado, before we get to talk about building a brand, let's have a quick introduction about yourself and your app.
Thanks, Mahnoor. Really great to be here. Really excited to share our story. So my background is, so I started co-founder CEO of a company called Equals. We've been at it for about 2.5 years now. Before that, I was an analyst. I spent the last 10 years as somebody who was in finance, in analytics. Within those 10 years, I spent 8 years at a company called Intercom. I started when the company was 20 people. I left when it was almost 700 people, from $1 million in ARR to over a couple hundred million in ARR. And there I ran finance, analytics, biz ops, a few other teams. And that's really what kind of inspired the idea for Equals. Equals is a tool that I wish that I'd had in my time as an analyst and in my time in running and building finance analytics at Intercom. So Equals is, first and foremost, it's a spreadsheet because every meaningful business decision that I've ever made has happened out of a spreadsheet. Every analysis I've ever done every meaningful analysis I've ever done has happened in a spreadsheet. And what I really want as a tool, as an analyst, is a spreadsheet. But Equals is different from Excel and Sheets in that it's, first and foremost, it's connected to live data. So it's built on top of every data warehouse, but also connected to Stripe, Salesforce, QuickBooks, Google Analytics, the most commonly used SaaS tools. It's fully collaborative. It's got a version history, and a whole lot more is coming in how we kind of distribute reports within an organization.
Thank you for that. Could you walk us through as to what led you to start your own company? What was that first step that you decided to start your own company?
So for me, I mean, it's been a journey ever since I really left college and started my career. I've always kind of known that I've been pointed towards wanting to start my own company. When I graduated, actually, it started really at Stanford, where I went to college. I took a class by a guy named Steve Blank, who wrote a book called The 4 Steps to the Epiphany. And in this class, over the course of 10 weeks, you had to actually go and start a company. And so you had to figure out what your idea was. You had to go and find the problem. So you had to interview potential customers, prospects, find a pain point. And then over the course of the 10 weeks, you had to put together the company. And then at the end of it, you actually had to pitch it to VCs, and they gave you feedback on whether or not they liked the idea, whether it was viable, whether you should continue with it, and whether they'd fund it. And that was for me, like that class, that 10 weeks was the most fun I'd ever had in school. And it was the kind of catalyst, I guess, for it planted the seed for me that this is what I really want to do. So then from there, it was kind of a progression of different opportunities. I started my career at a company called IBM, which was 400,000 people and the complete opposite of a startup. And then I kind of worked my way into smaller and smaller companies from there. I joined a 100-person startup, and then I joined Intercom. It was 20 people. Saw that kind of grow, and all of that was pointing me to eventually starting my own company. I just like the earliest days the most.
Well, I'm sure all of us and all the users for Equals are very grateful for that class that you took at Stanford, because it clearly helped us all. So according to you, what are the building blocks of having this successful tech startup? Given that Equals is a very successful startup, what do you think would be the most important factors that play in to make any startup successful at the end of the day?
Yeah. I think it starts with the founders, and it starts with the passion for the idea. It starts, something I think a lot about myself is, is what you're working on kind of intrinsic, meaning, is it something that you deeply care about? Is it something that you want to exist in the world? Is it something that exists to benefit others and to help others, and something, again, that you're like passionate and fiery about? Because building a startup is not easy. There are many days I wake up and it's the to-do list is never ending. The number of issues that pop up that are not fun to work through are never ending. And so more than anything else, it starts with, do you care deeply? And is it something that is within you that you're excited and fired up and need to exist in the world? That, to me, if you have that, then, all of the other problems we can talk about what other problems come up as a founder and how you address them and all the little pieces of how you work through them. But if you have that kind of fire, that innateness within the thing that you're working on, all of the other things are kind of, you can work through them.
Well, that was a rather insightful answer. Could you also explain to us how, they say that startups usually struggle while finding their perfect product market fit, right? So how did Equals App identify and refine its target market to achieve such rapid growth?
Yeah, it was, so one of the benefits, and this goes back to what I just talked about, in that one of the great parts about Equals for me is that, for me, it's the product that I wish it existed for myself. And so it's this like passion project that I get to bring in. And so a lot of the early days of Equals was kind of spent really reflecting on my own experiences as an analyst, and thinking through what are the things that I went through, what are the pain points I had, what are the workflows I wish had existed. And so a lot of it was just came from kind of the decade of work that I had put into the craft that I'd been in. But then obviously alongside that, my experience is my experience. And so even before writing a single line of code, I went out and talked to hundreds of other people just like me in similar roles. First finance hires at different companies, first ops peoples, first CEOs, founders, people who were probably having similar struggles that I was having in my role at Intercom. And so just explain to them kind of what it is that I'm trying to set out to accomplish with Equals. What we showed them mock-ups of the product. We showed them, described to them kind of the problems, try to understand what their problems were. And then from there, it was just constantly talking to people, constantly putting the product, as we started to have something, even if it was rough and ugly, it was, let's show it to people. Okay, is it ready to put in somebody's hand? It is. Oh my God, it's breaking, it doesn't work, they can't use it, why can't they use it? And it's just every day trying to talk to and put it in front of as many people and get as much feedback. And from there, if your rough thesis is right, which with Equals I kind of knew it was right because it was the thing that I wish I'd had, if your rough thesis is right, then you just need to iterate your way to what is the thing that really clicks for people. What are the issues that they're having? Can you get rid of as many issues as possible? And then you can get to, that elusive product market fit, which happens, but also does it ever really happen? Does a company ever really get to product market fit? You always have to keep iterating on it.
It always keeps you on your toes, doesn't it? Running a startup is really a dream as it stands. So, scaling a startup from $1 million to 200 million ARR is a significant achievement, I must say. What were the main challenges during this journey? Could you highlight those?
Yeah, I think that the biggest challenge was, we just touched on it, but it's kind of reinventing yourself along every step of the way. The fallacy you kind of get into when you're in a startup is you always think it's going to get easier. You're like, oh, we'll just make this one hire. We will, we'll just, if we can grow this percentage this month, or if we can hit this ARR target for this year, it's going to get easier. Well, if we can figure out this one thing, if we ship this one feature, whatever you convince yourself of, you think it's going to get easier once you do that, and it never gets easier. It never, the problems change, what you need to do changes. You find product market fit the first time, but then you realize that that's going to get you from 1 to 5 million in ARR, but actually to get from 5 to 50 million in ARR, you need to do a completely different thing. You need to build a completely different go-to-market motion. You need to have a different segment of you need to have a different product for a different segment of the market. And so it's just you're always having to kind of reinvent yourself. And so for me, going from 1 to 200 million in ARR, there were probably at least 3 or 4 different reinventions within that. There were business model reinventions, new products that we had to ship and launch, things that we failed at, things that we smashingly succeeded at. And so the hardest part is just being willing to kind of let go of your old way of thinking about things and starting again and saying, okay, in Intercom's case, for example, the first handful of million of ARR came from a product-led growth kind of bottoms-up motion. But then from there, it was, okay, now we need to figure out how sales works, and we need to figure out how to outbound, and we need to figure out, and it's a completely different product, completely different motion. It doesn't work at first. You're sitting there banging your head against the wall, and you need to figure out how to model. And so you need to throw away everything that you knew before and kind of start again. And so you're constantly having to do that.
So every day it's a new challenge, right? But let's say for a successful company, you definitely require a strong team. So at Equals, do you guys have a specific hiring and talent management strategy that you assemble for a high-performing team, or what do you guys prefer to do?
Yeah, I think there's a few things when you kind of set up a team. I mean, I think you need to be really clear on the type of culture and the environment that you want to create. And so I, as a founder, take that responsibility incredibly seriously. So Ben McRedmond's my co-founder. We set out from the very beginning of starting Equals and laid out what kind of company we want to create. What's the tone that we want to set? What's the ways in which we want to work? And we put it down on paper, and every single person that we've hired, we've brought on and said, hey, this is how we work as a team. If you're joining us, you're signing up for this. And then one of the kind of core things that we talk a lot about is keeping the team really, really small for what we want to accomplish. We actually believe that smaller teams can do a whole lot more than big teams tend to get kind of bogged down, and you trip over one another. You just kind of slow each other down. If you keep a small team with a really, really high bar for talent, and that means you've got to be ruthless in some cases about who you bring on and who you keep on at the company. But if you keep that kind of quality bar really, really high and the quantity bar really low, you can actually really unlock some magic. You can do a whole lot more than people believe you can. But for me, it's, making sure that people understand exactly what we're setting out to achieve. What's our vision? What's our mission? What's the strategy by which we're going to accomplish that? And then setting up really clear parameters and structures for how people are going to be held accountable and how people are going to do their best work. And if you do that, then it becomes glaringly obvious who's working, who's performing, who's not performing, and people are then empowered to do their best work because they know exactly what they need to do and by when they need to do it. Just creates a really kind of seamless kind of place to work.
Well, that I'm sure is a wonderful strategy and has worked wonders for you guys. Equals app's growth trajectory is very impressive. And can you highlight any specific marketing or customer acquisition strategy that has played a crucial role in achieving such a good expansion and such a rapid expansion, to say?
Yeah. So for us, it's been two things that have really kind of all our growth has come from two channels. One has been just showing the product to the world. We're Equals as a product first company. We've built something that's both unique in market and very well designed. People see it and they understand what Equals is. And so what we do, and I think a lot of startups when they're thinking about marketing and kind of taking their product out into the world, maybe skew a little bit too much towards the, hey, here's the solution-y type speak, like, hey, we're going to save you money. Hey, we're going to make you more efficient. Hey, we're going to get you more revenue. And that's like ultimately every product is going to do that. It's going to save you money or make you money. But I think in the early days, a lot of times you just have to show the product, show it, tell people what it is, let them see it, let them see what it does. Because in the early days, like sometimes you haven't really figured out how to articulate exactly what it is, the pain point, or exactly what it is that you solve for a customer. And so what we've done is just put the product front and center. You go to our marketing site and it's product. A lot of the things that I do on social media, for example, is like demo videos that show a lot of, hey, check out what you can do with equals. Here's an example of me doing something in the product, and I'll record it and I'll talk through it. But it's all about putting the product front and center. So that's one, putting the product out, shipping fast, showing it. And then the second has been content. Content has been something that I've invested a lot in, especially in the early days, the first year and a half or so of equals. I was writing blog posts every week, and the blog posts for me were, I treated them as kind of not like SEO things, not like how to do this, how to do that, but it was more like letters to my former self is really what I thought of them as. It was like things that I wish I had known, articles that I wish I had read 10 years ago when I was starting my job at Intercom. And that really connected with people. It was like, okay, these are things that I just wish were helpful. It wasn't, again, about equals. It wasn't promoting equals. It was just, hey, here are pieces of content that I wish had existed. And then from there, people found out about equals and they'd ping us, and we probably got our first 20 customers purely through those blog posts. And so again, it was just a spirit of kind of helping people and putting stuff out there that I wish had existed for myself.
I'm glad that paid off, you helping people, and then it has worked wonders for you. So I'm sure scaling equals must have been involved a lot of times where you had to secure funding and maintain solid relationships with your investors, right? So what advice would you have for startups who are looking for funding, and how do they maintain solid relationships with their investors?
Yeah, my advice, and this was helpful to some people and maybe less helpful to directly to founders in seat right now, but if you're thinking about starting a company, what worked for me was building relationships with investors in a place where I wasn't a founder. So what really helped for me were the 8 years that I spent at Intercom, where I got to know a ton of VCs. I got to know them through being somebody who was either reporting on the business to them. So at Intercom, we had many different venture investors. But then also I got to know a lot of folks because we went out and fundraised, and I got to talk to lots of prospective investors. And for me, it was really beneficial to get to build relationships with folks outside of the context of, hey, I'm raising money, I need to, here's my idea, what do you think? And so I'd encourage folks to, this is my path, but my path was go join a startup, find ways to build relationships with investors outside of a situation where you yourself are needing to raise money or you're pitching the idea. So that's a viable path, and that's one that helped me a lot, because once it then became time for me to start a company, I had a whole list of investors that I built relationships with, and it was pretty easy to call them, and they knew the caliber of my work. They knew about my experience. And so just the tone of the conversation, all of them took meetings with me. And again, the tone of the conversation was just fundamentally different. And then maybe on the other end of the spectrum, the advice I'd give to founders is, in some ways, like, don't talk to VCs unless you're actually raising money. I think that VCs tend to you can get distracted a lot of times. If you're raising money, then talk to all of them and get as many meetings as you possibly can. But if you're not raising money, you're honestly just giving them kind of free peeks into your business. It's better to just kind of try to do it all at once, as opposed to always kind of keeping the door open to fundraising.
Okay. So, since Equal serves as startups, is one of those startups which has served a lot of startups and has helped them achieve whatever that they wanted, right? So how do you stay ahead of the market trends and industry changes while providing them with the best solutions, but also staying ahead to all the changes in the industry and the market trends that we see on everyday basis?
Yeah, I think a lot of it, it stems back to that kind of, is this something that you're innately passionate about, that you care deeply about? A lot of the ideas for Equals come from myself or my co-founder, who we've just lived this pain. And so when you have kind of a platform of a product that you can then build on, you can just dream up ideas. I mean, it sounds silly, but like, if you deeply understand the problem, deeply understand the space that you're serving, talk to customers frequently, then it's just a process of being creative and thinking through what are the most elegant ways you can solve something, and making sure you allocate time to that you set aside time to kind of dream up ideas, or that you set aside time to just have spontaneous conversation where you can all of a sudden, one of you maybe throws out an idea, another person builds on it, somebody else takes it in a slightly different direction, and then from there you're like, oh wow, okay, maybe this has legs. And so making sure that making sure that you understand the problem deeply, are passionate about it, and then giving yourself kind of the space and the air to let new things kind of emerge, all is kind of the recipe, in my opinion, to staying ahead of the market and building kind of new creative, innovative features.
So, everybody talks about utilizing AI, but not everyone, I'm sure, has mastered it. What is something that you feel that companies or individuals specifically get wrong about AI?
AI is definitely the future, and it's here to stay. And we're just so still early in the kind of evolution of what's going to be possible and how AI is going to kind of get woven into every SaaS product on the market. The thing that I think we struggled with AI in the beginning, and I think a lot of startups I see a lot of startups kind of making the same mistake, is everything is kind of this like chat interface. We've taken ChatGPT and we've tried to basically just copy and paste that into every single product. And for Equals, that didn't work. That was where we started. It was like, oh, let's build like a little chat interface where you can ask questions of the spreadsheet, or you can have it answer questions for you, or to give you recommendations, or give you summaries. And we found kind of a couple problems. One was OpenAI ChatGPT just wasn't good at that. Like the spreadsheet's too big, too broad, too many things you can ask of it. The requirements of what we had to send as prompts to ChatGPT or as kind of training data was, again, it was too broad. And so it didn't do a good job of kind of answering a user's questions, or get confused. And so we spent a lot of time thinking through, how do we really tailor and kind of narrow down the possibilities, the number of possible prompts, and the number of kind of variables that ChatGPT has to consider when answering a question. And so what we ended up doing was actually embedding ChatGPT into different parts of the UI that's contextual to what you're doing there. So ChatGPT for us is integrated with a cell. You can prompt it in a cell. And when you're in a cell, specifically, you're usually trying to edit a formula, or ask it for a formula, or ask it to explain a formula. You can also use it in a SQL editor, where you're trying to write a SQL query, edit a SQL query, fix a SQL query. You can use it on charts, where you're trying to edit a chart or ask something in the chart. And so it's about kind of being really specific in the ways in which you want to use AI, and then tailoring that experience to the end user such that they can use it in a way that's most powerful and most accurate for them.
Okay, so while we're talking about the future, according to you, which technologies are currently defining success, and which ones do you think would be leading the game by 2025?
When you say defining success, what do you mean by that?
For example, what technologies do you think would really aid the users, and would basically are something that everybody should be looking forward to in the future?
Well, I mean, I think we're all really excited about the kind of onslaught of new AI tools and the future. So curious to just kind of see how that evolves over time. And like I said, I think we're just at the very kind of precipice of that. Yeah, and maybe kind of leave it there for now.
So just at the end, do you have advice for aspiring entrepreneurs or people who plan on starting a startup in the coming future? What advice would you want to give them?
Yeah, I'd say a few things. one, if you're excited and passionate about it, it's about as fun a journey as you can possibly go on. So go for it. And, one of the things that I've learned over my career and in my life is you never know what's going to happen a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, tomorrow. And so if you want to do something, if you want to try it, if you want to, it's right now, go for it. And so, for me, this has been, I started my career and spent 10 years in finance and analytics, and it's a totally different experience being a founder. But it's the thing that it finally feels like I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And so if you have kind of that pull, get excited about an idea, try to solve a real problem for people, and then go for it, because it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun.
Well, that was one hell of advice. With that, we're going to end. And thank you so much for joining us. We're really, really grateful for having you today here. And do you have any closing remarks before you leave?
No, that's all. Thanks so much for having me. This was really fun.
Thank you so much.